This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter for Mac Voices viewers and listeners. Visit MacVoices.com, look for the blue box in our sidebar, and subscribe. Welcome to the MacJury on Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have a great panel to talk about Apple's announcements, the iPhone 6, Apple Pay, and Apple Watch. And I'm just going to jump right into it because we've got so much to talk about. So let me introduce the panel to you first. Going by my screen, left to right, Mr. Chuck Tournous, who is out of the woods just to talk to us. Chuck, it's great to talk to you.
Just briefly out of the woods, just since yesterday, in fact. I'm Chuck Tournous. I'm doing most of my writing now for the Mac Observer, MacObserver.com, although I still occasionally throw some bon mots at randomaccess.com, 2 M's, 2 C's, 2 S's, and then every once in a while my open beta site called Trail Camper is up and running, and I'll throw in some things about the intersection between high technology and high adventure there.
Great. 3 great sites, 1 great guy. Thanks for being here, Chuck.
My pleasure.
Next up, I think I just saw him not too long ago, Mr. Joe Kissell. Joe, it's great to have you back yet again.
Nice to be here. You can find my stuff at TakeControlBooks.com, where I'm currently writing my 49th Take Control book. And I write for Macworld.com and Tidbits.com. So I'm happy to be here with you.
49 books. Good job. Right. Last but
I'm not sure I've read 49 books. Yeah. So that's very impressive.
Last but absolutely not least, our friend Mr. Ted Landau, who's been out and about for a while. He's back, and you came back just for this event, Ted? Is that it?
No, but I'm here.
Okay. It's good to have you back. It's good to have you back. So, guys, the Flint Center in Cupertino, we saw a lot of things that I think a lot of folks expected. We maybe saw a few things that were a little bit of a surprise, or maybe just the way they came out. I figured we'd sort of take it in order and start with the iPhone 6. We have 2 sizes now. The actual iPhone 6 actually got bigger. It's not like there's a 5S size and then a larger size. The 6 is bigger. The 6 Plus is bigger yet. Reactions to that? Was that the way you thought it would go? Chuck, we'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, is it the way I thought it would go? Well, based on all the rumors that had been coming out in advance of the announcement, they were pretty much dead on, including a lot of the leaked screenshots turned out to be, exactly what was unveiled today. As far as what I want it to be, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to go in and hold the bigger phone in my hand. I've never felt that the current iPhone was too small for me. And I've never been a fan of, what they call phablets. In fact, I think this may be the first time I've ever uttered the word. So, I'll have to see if I like that bigger size. I can't see myself liking the 6 Plus. Reminds me of something you'd find in Lane Bryant. But we'll see. There appears to be a market for that, especially overseas. So I'm sure that's was well thought out at Apple, and I'm sure it'll do very well. Technologically, I like what I see, but I think they were iterations. The improvements were iterations over the iPhone 5S, which makes me happy as a 5S owner because it means I'll be happy to wait for the 6S. I won't have a lot of Apple lust on the phones that were unveiled today. I do like the payment, the Apple Pay, which will only be available on the new iPhones. And that'll be something that I'll have to wait to get to adopt. But there are a lot of people out there who will be able to use it, and I think that's going to help the adoption a lot. And I think Apple implemented it extremely well.
Chuck, I can't keep track of my own upgrade cycles, let alone yours and everybody else's. Is this the year that you're on for an upgrade, or do you still have another model to wait?
I generally upgrade with the S models, so I'll have another model to wait.
Got it.
I'm in the what I call the every other year iPhone club.
Joe, how about you? Is a bigger iPhone a big appeal to you?
Not so much. I mean, I pretty much agree with everything Chuck said. I never felt like my iPhone 5 was too small. It did seem like a nice improvement over the 4 and the 4S. So, I got used to it. I do worry that I'm going to have to buy all new pants. I don't know. I mean, my pockets are only so big. I would almost definitely go for the 6 over the 6 Plus. The only two things that I find tempting about the 6 Plus are that it is the one that has optical image stabilization, whereas the 6 doesn't, and I really, really like that. And it does have a 1080p display, which is nice. I mean, not that it's going to really matter at that size. I'm not going to be watching, a lot of feature-length movies on a little screen, but it is kind of cool. I feel like I'd be very self-conscious, walking down the street talking on one of these things. But this is my year to upgrade. I have a 5. I didn't have the 5S. I really need Touch ID. I really need the M8. So I'm looking forward to it. I will give the 6 Plus the benefit of the doubt until I see it. But tentatively, I would say the 6 is probably the way I'll go, and I will grumble a little bit because it's going to be more of a burden to carry than I'm used to.
Hey, Chuck, can I jump in?
Sure.
With a follow-up question for Joe, because he's
Sure.
the guy to ask. I saw the lens on the 6 Plus and got really excited. I like the idea, as you do, of the optical stabilization. I was almost hoping that there might be an optical zoom with that technology, with the way it juts out from the camera body, from the phone body. Is that a possibility in a device like this? And what would that mean to you?
I would love optical zoom. I'm sure that if and when it happens, Apple will trumpet it loudly. Almost all the shots I take with my iPhone are more wide angle than I prefer, and I don't like cropping because then I lose I lose resolution, I lose information. So I would love to have optical zoom. I don't know enough about optics to know what is theoretically possible to fit in that small of a space, but if anybody can find a way, Apple can, and I really hope they do. That'd be really, really nice.
Ted, optical zoom.
I've always assumed that the problem with an optical zoom is that the lens would have to jut out more than Apple would like, at least with the current technology. But boy, I would love it too. I've written about it several times. That's the single biggest complaint I have about the iPhone camera, similar to Joe. There are just too many times that I would really like to be able to zoom in a little bit. Even a 2x zoom would make a big difference from the current camera. And so, yeah, I'd love to see that, but it didn't come this time. As to my decision, it's similar to what the other folks have said. I have a friend that has a 5.5-inch Android phone, and every time I see him take it out and use it, I feel like I'm watching some circus performance where a clown is using something absurdly large for comic effect or something like that. It doesn't seem natural at all. But there is something about that size that did attract me, and that is that it has the software capability, anyway, of having a more iPad-like display, where you get the side-by-side listing of messages and text and so on that you can't do with the current iPhone. But I've lived with that with the current iPhone. If I really want that, I can go to an iPad Mini or something like that. I'm inclined to get the iPad 6, not the 6 Plus, for those reasons. In fact, I was a little surprised that they didn't have an iPhone 6 that was a 4-inch screen. Essentially, they're saying, going forward, there's nobody on the planet Earth that wants a 4-inch screen anymore. If you want the latest iPhone, you have to get at least a 4.7-inch screen. And I didn't think we'd gotten to that point, but that's where we are. And I'm in the fortunate position of being able to get a new iPhone every year, because it's one of the benefits of being married, I guess. My wife has an iPhone, and she got it on the off year, and so one of us is always eligible for a discounted, subsidized phone, and so I just get one every year. And I will probably be getting the iPhone 6. Though I intend tomorrow actually go to a store and look at some Android 5.5-inch phones and just see if there's any way I can conceive of having one, but I doubt that I will.
It's the first benefit I've heard to being married, Ted. That's
Really? It's just the first? Well, I thought there was more than that.
Well, it's the first one I've heard that maybe is viable.
Otherwise, why did anybody get married before there were iPhones?
Yeah. So Ted, you're going to do exactly what I'm going to do. And if there's someone, forgive me, I don't know who, if I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes, who has published something that you can cut out in paper, the relative sizes of the iPhones.
I think this is The Verge, I think.
Was it? Okay.
Ars Technica has one, if the Verge does.
Okay.
Maybe it's Ars Technica.
Yeah, I think it was ours. You're right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I need to do. Just judging by the appearance of it, though, it doesn't strike me. The 6 Plus doesn't strike me as being the same width, if you will, as some of the phablets we've seen up to this point. So maybe that's just an optical illusion or the photography that Apple's using. But I'm inclined to go with the 6, but I hate to leave the optical stabilization on the table. If I'm going to go that far, why not just dive in and try the bigger form factor and see if I like it?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure how much I need the optical stabilization. Apparently it's useful, but it isn't something that I've been craving. And the 1080p, I think, is not important on a screen that size. I don't think you can even tell the difference, really. But I'm waiting for John Gruber's article that will analyze how Apple accomplished these different screen sizes relative to what's necessary to run the software, because he can spend many pages doing that. So
the other question I have, though, about the 6 Plus's screen size, they demonstrated some apps that weren't really iPhone form factor apps and weren't really iPad form factor apps. They were sort of a blend. Now I have an iPad mini that I love. It's so far up until today my favorite Apple object, and I use it all the time. And if the way they did the UI for the apps that I cared about on the 6 Plus were sufficiently appealing that I could use that and not miss my iPad mini, that would conceivably be interesting to me, to have one do-it-all device instead of two. But there are so many things that really only work with the that many more pixels that I don't know if that's going to be conceivable or not.
Well, that's one of the things that people say is one of the several reasons that people have offered for why there's a downturn in sales of tablets. I'm not sure I buy it, but that's certainly it. And we are a different group, I think. You have an iPad mini and an iPhone. There are a lot of people that probably feel they can't afford to have both. And would look at a 5.5-inch iPhone and say, well, maybe that's the device I can have that make it so that I don't need to have a tablet. I think if you can afford to have an iPad mini, then the idea of getting a 5.5-inch iPhone looks less attractive. You don't really need it. I actually like the iPad Air better. I just like Apple got the iPad Air thin enough and small enough for me that I appreciate having the larger screen size over the mini. But I know there are a lot of people, including you, that like the mini better.
How about the new chip? Does that? I was especially interested in this and Metal, and one of the comments that I think was posted to the Apple Live blog that the iPhone 6 Plus will outperform the current generation of console games, or even the next generation of console games. This to me seems to be important. I'm not a gamer. I think Ted's a gamer here. I'm not sure anybody else is, but this seems to be pushing Apple back into that market yet again to try to make, I guess, a takeover bid.
Well, it means, I'll just, my off-the-cuff remark, maybe I'll regret this, but here goes. It means absolutely nothing to me on the iPhone. I think it will mean something on the iPad. But my use of an iPhone I don't do anything on an iPhone that I can think of that requires any more speed than I currently get from it. So the iPad's different. There are games I play on the iPad that I could benefit from, and productivity apps that and photo editing, things like that I might do that could benefit from it. But my iPhone is, I use it for the essential things that you use an iPhone for, and making phone calls and GPS tracking and text messaging and checking the stock market and a few other things. But really, whatever it is I'm doing, the speed I have is currently just fine.
Chuck, you spend a lot of time, or a lot more time with kids because of your actions with the Scouts. And any trends you see there, or that you can pick up on from those kids?
Yeah, I think the hardcore gamers are still going to want either the consoles or the PCs because of the keyboards and the multi-button mice. And I don't think the interface of the iPad is going to threaten that market at all. I think it's obviously threatening things like the Nintendo DS and the other handhelds, and I think prevented some of them from really making any market traction with some of their latest offerings. But I don't think it's really going to put a dent in that hardcore dedicated console or PC gamer market. It may be a nice complementary market, but you're not going to sway people over from a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One to an iPad, I think.
Unfortunately, it's my fault. We kind of skipped over the camera from the video perspective. There seem to be some nice video enhancements to the iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus. That's something that has me excited because I seem to be shooting more and more video with my iPhone, and so the idea of, because actually my dedicated video camera is getting a little long in the tooth, and I've been thinking about replacing it. And here we go. I might not need to. You do have the lens issue that you don't have the capability of doing some of that. You don't have the capability of optical zoom. But for everything else, this would seem to be a very nice improvement and might sway me into keeping my video camera for a few more years and letting that money help fund the iPhone 6.
I'll tell you what improvement I was hoping to see in the video recording. I was hoping to see Apple solve the problem of people holding their phones vertically and getting vertical videos. This is a solvable problem, right? Technology can fix this. And that seems like an Apple-ish kind of thing to do. I mean, I can think of all different kinds of ways Apple could fix it, but any way would be fine. I have 2 young kids, and we like taking videos of our kids. I am really religious about holding my iPhone this way when I'm taking videos. Other adults in my family, not mentioning any names, are not always so scrupulous. And I can't watch a vertical video like this on a big wide screen. It drives me crazy. So that was the problem I wanted Apple to solve. And if maybe the 6S, who knows? But that's.
I just get annoyed that I have to shift into vertical mode to take a panorama shot. I wish I could take a panorama shot horizontally. And on the just to follow up on what Chuck was saying on the subject of gaming, I think Apple has totally taken over the mobile gaming market, or certainly smartphones have in general, compared to Nintendo's or any other gaming device. I don't have statistics in front of me, but I know I go on public transportation a lot, and I don't see one person ever using. I see lots of people playing games on the BART and other things like that, but I don't see anybody playing a game on anything other than a smartphone. That's it. I mean, smartphones are pretty much it for mobile gaming right now.
Yeah, and I think even Nintendo has kind of bit the bullet and started to develop games for iOS. I don't know that any have been released yet, but I think they have announced that they're going to start that. I think that's a smart move because Ted's right. Aside from smartphones and iOS, if you want to make any money at it, mobile gaming is gone.
Any thoughts on battery life issue, especially with the iPhone 6S? It's going to be larger, but it's going to have that many more pixels, and it's thinner.
They promised longer battery life on the stats that I saw. That's all I can say at this point.
Yeah, they're using a lot of that extra space for a big honking battery, and yeah, it's going to take more power to drive the bigger screen, but I think there's a lot left over. And Ted's right. They're saying that you're going to get better just than you did with the 5. So
I should qualify my earlier statement about how I would be disinclined to get a 6 Plus. The 6 Plus does have a longer battery life. And I tend to either carry around a spare external battery or get a battery pack for my iPhones because, my iPhone 5, the battery does not last all day. not without plugging it in occasionally to recharge. So if it were hypothetically to turn out that the 6 Plus's slightly longer battery life were long enough to reliably get me through a whole day without having to get a battery case or carry around an external battery pack, that would certainly, in many respects, make up for the extra size of the phone. It would be, taller and wider, but not thicker. And so the thought of having an iPhone 6 Plus, twice as thick for a battery case is really not appealing at all. So I just wanted to sort of make that point that the longer battery life could possibly be, a couple of points in favor of the 6 Plus.
Ted, how about cases and bumpers? They made a big deal about how this is an edge-to-edge or really over-the-edge kind of screen. It's sort of a wraparound, if I read it or understood it correctly. And yet, we always seem to have that, can I hang on to this phone issue? You think we're going to...
They said that, but some of the photos that I saw like on the white iPhones, there was still a white border around the display, which I wasn't expecting from what they were saying. Of course, I'm half of what they said I missed because of the streaming problems. maybe that's the issue there, but it didn't look like an edge-to-edge display from the photos that I saw. So, but
did you have a comment on the streaming, Joe?
Oh, well, I could spend, I don't know, a half hour, 45 minutes talking about the streaming, but we're breaking up color bars. I was embarrassed for Apple. I mean, I don't know how many people actually attempted to watch it live, but apparently too many, because it was fine up until about 2 minutes before the keynote started, and then they started having video problems, and it didn't sort of settle down for, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes into the presentation. A lot of that time, people would not, get error messages. They would just see color bars. They would see like video from, 10 minutes ago or other random things. And I felt like, man, if Apple can't even nail the video of their event, like that, that just doesn't bode well. And it gave me an icky feeling. I mean, it's not just I'm irritated that the technology didn't work, but I mean, Apple's supposed to be the company that solves these big, important technical problems, and they couldn't solve that problem, and that felt troubling to me.
We have to spend just a second on this, but it was at the Flint Center. It was not at the Yerba Buena where it typically has been, although they've done other things at the Flint Center. There was so much anticipation over this. And I'm being an Apple apologist, because it did seem like there were some errors there that went way beyond just the streaming issue. But I don't know. It bothered me just a little bit that we didn't see something a little more stable. I was in a situation where I could not, for better or worse, be actually watching the stream with any regularity. So I was sort of going on the Apple Live blog, which that's a whole nother discussion. But it did seem to be a little disappointing.
In the 5 or 10 minutes before the keynote started, they have all these cameras inside the Flint Center. People are getting seated, and lots of cameras moving around on the big arms, and it looked like the Oscars are going to start. It was just this big, impressive production, and it looked like, wow, they have put huge amounts of effort and money and care into the video presentation of this. And I think, if it was just like, guy with, a little camcorder in the back shooting it, that would have been different. But it's like, wow, they pulled out all the stops. They left, nothing to chance, seemingly trying to make this a great video presentation. And that made it sort of hurt more, I think.
Apparently, they did leave something to chance.
Well, clearly.
Good point. Well, let's move on to Apple Pay. This one seemed to develop kind of late, as far as, and not necessarily the technology, but also the back end stuff. All the technology is kind of interesting. Chuck, this I don't know. This has the feel of something big to me, and I know I have my reasons why I think it may be big, but I'm curious to see what you think.
Yeah, I think this maybe more than any of the other announcements maybe the Apple Watch has the potential to be the most long-reaching of all the announcements that were made today. I think it could. I don't think it's an overstatement to say it could change the way we pay for things. It could change our way of commerce in at least America and maybe even the world. What makes it different from other attempts at this, I think, is the huge installed base that Apple has and the transparency, at least from what I've seen so far, in how things work. So it's not only a more convenient way to pay for things, it's a more secure way to pay for things. It's a way for you to pay for your dinner or your new blouse or whatever at the mall and not have to give the store personnel your credit card information because they won't know it. It'll go through as encrypted numbers that'll go to the bank and be verified and okay the transaction, but they'll never have access to the numbers on your card, the numbers on the front or the security code on the back. And my biggest concern about credit card fraud has never been the online stuff that goes over secure connections. It's been what happens to my card when I hand it to the waiter and he goes out in the back of the restaurant for 10 minutes and I don't see it. So the fact that it's more convenient and more secure and not just convenient, I think has a real potential here. The other thing I like a lot is the apps itself. Transaction too. Apple never knows what you're buying. It never stores your credit card information. It turns it, as does Touch ID. Touch ID doesn't save a scan of your thumbprint. It translates it into meaningless numbers. And Apple does a similar thing with the credit cards. So I think it's smart from a whole lot of levels. Glenn Fleischman was tweeting a lot today about the fact that NFC isn't the big deal here. NFC is a pretty easy technology. It's been worked out. It's the implementation of it that makes this really special. And I definitely agree with him. Probably as recently as a week ago, I would have said that Apple wouldn't go NFC, that they weren't going to jump on the bandwagon that Google and others had already started, that they'd use some other kind of technology, Bluetooth Low Energy or iBeacon or whatever. And I was wrong on that, but I think Glenn makes the excellent point that it's not the technology that's important, it's what Apple is doing with it.
Ted, this doesn't feel like NFC to me, though. And I know there's arguments probably that it technically is, but because I'm going to be using my thumbprint to authenticate, that each individual charge, it's not like I'm just waving my iPhone over something to pay for it, but there's going to be an individual authorization via thumbprint. This just feels better to me. Am I missing anything?
No, it feels better to me too. I thought it was a really good presentation, and if it lives up to it, I'm quite excited. But I'm with Chuck that I think this is probably for me, the most far-reaching of the announcements that were made today. I can anticipate using it a lot. I think one of the potentially nice things about NFC, and maybe it figured into Apple doing it, is something down the road, and that is one of the things that I look forward to is having something like this Apple Pay break us out of the jungle of having 16 different ways to automatically pay for things depending upon what store you're at. Some stores use Square, some stores use NFC, some stores use their own proprietary software. I don't know. I mean, it seems like every time I go into a store, if they have any Starbucks, I can't use my iPhone because they have an Android-only software, at least the ones that I visited. If this could be something that is generally available in almost all the places that I visit, so that it becomes the one technology to rule them all, as they say, that would be great. But it seems to me, in order to do that, at some point, Apple's going to have to do similar to what they did with the iTunes, and that is make an Android version of it available, so that Android users will be able to use Apple Pay also. Because if it remains an Apple-only device, stores are still going to need two solutions, one for Apple Pay plus something else for their Android users, and that's going to cause problems. So it makes me wonder whether NFC might have been designed with an eye down the road of making this something that will be available through Android devices as well.
Ted, you may be absolutely right about that, but the alternative for the Android users may be just to continue to swipe your credit card, because I think that NFC, the Apple Pay, is going to be built into card readers as well. So, off on Android.
Yeah. It also I assume they're going to have to be portable card readers as well, or portable Apple Pay things, I guess I should say, because I can't, the example that Chuck was saying of the waiter coming to grab your credit card. Well, if you're at a fancy restaurant, the waiter isn't going to say, "Come with me to use your Apple Pay over the cash register."
Didn't they show something where you can actually pay from an app?
Yes.
Rather than handing over your device.
Yep, through Yelp and participating restaurants. Open Table, right?
Yeah.
I would like to kind of register a contrarian viewpoint, if I may, because so the thing on the wallet started with this picture of a bulging wallet, and Tim Cook saying, this is what we want to solve, and my first thought was, oh man, I'm a coin backer. Coin, the little, programmable credit card that replaces all your credit cards, and you can swipe it just like a regular credit card, but you can leave all those other cards at home and you just have one card that you carry around. So I'm like, that's great because my wallet is too thick and I want to have just one card, not 10. Okay, so my first thought was, damn it, there goes that investment. But as the presentation went on, I realized that what Apple is presenting is not going to permit me to leave my wallet at home. It's not going to permit me to take all the cards out of my wallet and leave those at home. It's not even going to replace the stuff that Square does. It's going to supplement it. Because as long as there is the chance that sometimes I'm going to go to places where I need a physical card, I've got to have the physical card with me of some kind. The places that Apple mentioned as being the initial partners, the big chains where you will at first be able to use Apple Pay. Well, I don't shop at any of those places, or once in a blue moon. Like I might shop at Macy's once a year, twice a year. I might shop at a physical Apple store once or twice a year. I don't need a McDonald's. I don't need a Panera Bread. I don't shop at Staples. I mean, all those other big places, Walgreens, I don't shop there. So it's going to take quite a long time before this is actually going to be regularly useful to me. But up until the point that I can be sure that, 99% of the days that I leave the house with only my iPhone in my pocket or my iWatch, that I'll be able to pay for the things I need, I'm going to still have the wallet overloaded with cards, or at least with some cards. And that part of it didn't quite ring true to me. And I love the idea. I mean, I really do love the idea, and I hope it takes off and that in a couple of years you can use your iPhone for absolutely everything everywhere. I'd be very, very happy. It's just that I think there's going to be quite a distance. We're going to be on the iPhone 8S by the time that's really plausible. And for quite some time, this is just going to be occasionally, isn't it cool that you can do that? Not a, oh, great, I don't have to have all those cards in my wallet anymore kind of thing.
I would just respond to that by saying I think you're right, but I'm pretty forgiving of Apple for that. I mean, when Apple opened their first Apple Store, I don't remember exactly what they said, but they could have said something like, and there's going to be a Genius bar in the Apple Store where you'll be able to come and answer your technical questions and get your iPhone or get your Apple products repaired with no hassle and so on. And of course, that would be fine if you lived in Virginia, wherever it was that they opened their first store. But it meant nothing to most people. But it took years before there were enough Apple stores that a statement like that had general value for almost everyone in the country. And I just assume that that's just what we're looking at here. This is just the beginning, and I don't see how Apple could do what you wanted on the first day.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm not saying that what I wish for is even possible or conceivable. It's just that I feel like they sort of oversold it. It's not like we're going to give you something on September 19th that's going to solve the problem that we're showing on the screen. It's not even like you're going to have that problem solved this year. Right. By the time this problem is really solved, you're going to be on a future generation of this phone. So that's
probably. Yeah, but I think that's how transitions work, and I think the way they introduced it with the number part they have in place already, I think it's going to make that transition shorter. And it may never be ubiquitous. You may always carry at least one credit card in your wallet, but I think the idea is you're not going to have to often take that credit card out and pair it with your ID and worry about who's got it when they go behind the counter and all that kind of stuff. And I believe that over time, customers are going to start to favor the stores that do offer this as a convenience. And as that happens, more and more stores are going to want to pick it up. I just wanted to loop back on one more security function that I thought was neat. And Chuck touched on it before. It's the fact that you still need to use your Touch ID in order to release that information from the iPhone to the receiver, which I think is a nice bit of security. And one of the things that I found out through talking with some of the people who were hands-on at the event is that the iWatch, or the Apple, I'm going to call it the iWatch Forever, just fair warning, that the Apple Watch also has a similar feature in that you have to enter a passcode on the watch first, and then that passcode is good as long as the watch touches your skin. So you can go up and touch the device, transfer your credit card information until you take the watch off or whatever and it loses contact with your skin, and then you have to re-enter your passcode before it'll work again. So I thought that was a pretty clever touch.
And I would just add that we're ultimately, if you really want to replace your wallet, Joe, you're talking about more than just credit cards anyway. I mean, I have a BART card, I have a AAA card, I have a library card, I have a Blue Cross card. I mean, there's a whole host of cards that I use over the course of days that ultimately would have to be iPhone accessible.
Now, I mean, you know, a lot of the things you mentioned, I could conceive of them being Apple Pay compatible in the future. I mean, BART could install the right kinds of, you know, change their readers so that you can use your phone to get into BART. You know, the thing with Coin is it's saying we're not just going to replace debit and credit cards. We're going to replace, you know, your supermarket loyalty card and all the ones you have for, you know, the different stores you shop at, which is great because I have a whole lot of those. Which is kind of, I mean, Passbook can kind of do that if you happen to shop in the right places. But I'm still always 100% of the time going to have my driver's license in my pocket. And I think there will always be a few things, but I would, if all I had to have was my driver's license, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, but now Coin, remember, only carries 16 cards, I think, if I remember correctly. So that's going to include all your library cards and loyalty cards and all that kind of stuff.
You can store, as I understand it, you can store as many cards as you want on your phone, but the card itself can only hold a limited number at one time, and so if you want to change them, you have to download it from your phone. Right,
yeah. The other thing I just wanted to throw out that I, too, am a Coin backer, at least I was until last week. When the NFC, well, that was part of it, but it was when the NFC stuff started really feeling real from Apple, and it was also the fact that I think chip and pin technology, which is pretty prevalent in Europe already, is on its way en route to the U.S. probably within the next year or two, right. And Coin doesn't support chip and pin, so I think, yeah, fair enough. But do I want to pay $100 every 2 years for a new Coin too? I think, you know, I began to see a lot of problems with Coin. I loved it at first. I wish them well, but I'm out at this point. As the sharks on ABC's show say, I'm out.
Joe, I guess my reaction to your contrarian view is sort of a contrarian to your contrarian. I was encouraged by the partners that Apple had. These are some major retail operations. It's not like they just started with, you know, one or two. They sign up a lot of people. You're right. I'm not sure that they reflect a lot of the places that I shop on a regular basis. Oh, wait a minute, I don't shop anywhere on a regular basis. But you know, these are the kind of places that I think a lot of iPhone users do shop, and iPhone users as in, you know, the rest of the iPhone users, not just the geeks. So I felt like, okay, they're off to a pretty good start here, and it's no small thing to start creating a new payment system. I mean, NFC, for all its promise, let's face it, has fallen pretty much flat. So whether Apple can rescue it with this version or this variation on it, it remains to be seen. But it feels like there's a decent chance.
I'm really just expressing my disappointment that none of the places I actually shop are on that list. And now, if Trader Joe's were on that list, then we could talk, or any of several other local supermarkets, or the local drugstore chains and so on, and maybe they will be soon. But
hey, Joe, if Apple says you should be shopping at Whole Foods instead of Trader Joe's and McDonald's instead of Burger King, who are we to argue, really? Okay.
Yeah, isn't there a little bit of contradiction there? They're talking about, it's so great to shop at Whole Foods because it's all organic, blah, 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 and also McDonald's.
Right.
Well, make up your mind.
So you can really put all the fitness features in the iWatch to the test, right?
You gotta.
Does it read your sodium levels?
Oh man!
Yeah, wait till you try to pay with the iWatch and it says you shouldn't be getting that.
Yeah. That's right.
Ooh.
Yeah, you're right, Chuck. The sodium detector has invalidated your purchase.
Yes,
that's good. That's good. Well, guys, we want to try to keep this to a reasonable length show, so we'll keep it moving. The third big announcement, I don't know if it's the biggest or not because they were all pretty big, is the Apple Watch. And I was really fascinated by this. I was fascinated by the fact that from where I sit, absent even the function, they seem to do so many things right in the fashion area, in the appearance, in the fact that they have two sizes. They did not try to create an artificial circular watch face. It's a little more rectangular, but it's very attractive. They are very conscious of how it looks on your wrist, how the watch face itself looks, and then you start to get into the features. And I'm curious, how important is that for you three? Do any of you wear a watch? Okay.
So this is a quote unquote smartwatch. It feels really embarrassed right now. I mean, it feels really old and sad and pathetic. It has a touch screen even. But I mean, it is so many miles behind the Apple Watch. It's just not even. It's just crazy. I am a lifelong watch wearer, and I like having more capabilities on my wrist. Hugely excited about the Apple Watch, which is not to say that I don't have questions, issues, complaints, wishes, but very, very, very excited about it.
Ted, watch wearer?
Yeah, I'm not wearing one now. I had one that broke a few months ago, and I used that as an opportunity to just try going without it because so many people I knew were just using their iPhone instead of a watch, and it's worked out okay. But I did like the convenience of being able to look at the time without taking something out of my pocket. And actually, that gets. I might mention I wasn't as blown away by the attractive design as you seem to have been. I was initially a little disappointed when I saw how it looked. I wanted something that looked more, more exciting. I can't think of the right adjective right now. It was fine, but it wasn't what I was hoping for. But that's okay. It's still form follows function, and it clearly needed to be. I think it needed to be sort of rectangular in that design in order to accommodate all the things that they were having to do. The biggest question for me, and since we're running out of time, there's a lot of positive things I could say about my initial reaction to the Apple Watch, but I'll say one that's more on the negative side because it's the biggest outstanding question for me, and it started coming to the fore when I was watching the demonstration where they were showing how you could look at photos on your watch and see all those little tiny pictures of photos and zoom in on them and so on. And I was thinking, why would I ever want to do that? The iPhone is required to use this Apple Watch, so presumably most of the time, if not all the time, I'm going to have an iPhone in my pocket when I'm using the Apple Watch. And if I want to look at photos, I can't imagine when I would say, well, I could take this iPhone out of my pocket and with this 5.5-inch 6 Plus look at the photos. No, I think I'll use my watch because looking at it on a little tiny 1-inch screen seems so much better. And then that started expanding that to thinking, how many different things does this watch do that the iPhone duplicates that that I really will find it desirable to be able to do it on the watch so much more that it's worth it for me to invest in this watch. And it's an expensive investment. If you just spent $300-400 on an iPhone, and now you're talking about a minimum of $350, I hate to see what they're going to charge for the 18 karat gold ones, probably $1,000 or something like that. So it's clearly, I think it's clearly in the luxury I want it rather than I need it category. And maybe someday, sort of like we were talking about with the Apple Pay, maybe someday it'll mature enough that I could see saying I absolutely need this. But right now, this strikes me as something that could be fun but hardly necessary.
Chuck, watch wearer?
Yeah, I was, most of my life, I stopped wearing watches probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and then started again 2 years ago. So I don't know why. I just went upstairs about a month ago with my son and looked through my watch drawer, and I have 13 or 14 of them. So I'm back as a watch wearer, I guess.
Yeah.
And normally wear one every day. Never bought a smartwatch. Although back in the day, I did buy the little digital Casios, the geek that I was. But I was turned off by most of what I saw in the smartwatches. What I saw today blows me away. I don't know yet whether I'll buy one, but I have some time to decide on that. $350 is, I think, a pretty hefty price tag, but we'll see. But I think it's something that has a great start and is only going to get better. What we saw in the presentation was mostly on the form, and I think Apple did a great job in using different size watches. So clearly, I think it's going to appeal to men and women. I love the different styles of straps. I think they give the watch completely different looks, and very polished, very wearable. You'd be embarrassed to wear. It also found out later after the announcement does have a left-handed mode. So if you wear your watch on your right wrist, you just wear it upside down, and the user interface will adapt. So now the digital crown will be on the bottom, but it's still more usable for the left-handers in the audience. So I think that was well thought out as well. What we saw on the capabilities of the watch, I think, is just the beginning. I think Apple even said they barely scratched the surface of showing what it can do. And we saw, a ton of apps on there. I love what they did with the interface. I agree with Ted. It's not going to be what I'm going to display photos on. But my iPod Nano, I have one of the little square iPod Nano, that shows photos too. I think it's just kind of a checkbox feature, frankly. But some of the things that I think it will do are going to be phenomenal. I think in the fitness area, clearly, they showed a lot of some really useful features for it. I think it's going to be very, very valuable when it's connected more to the Internet of Things. So, the idea of, your door unlocking when you get home at night automatically, and as you come in, the lights will turn on. You can do that with the phone, but I think the watch opens up a lot more possibilities. So I'm extremely optimistic about the future of the Apple Watch. I don't know whether I'll get version 1, but I think it's going to continue to explode, especially as third parties start to figure things out to do with it.
At the risk of focusing too much on the appearance, I want to know why. That's been a complaint of all the watches. Why is Apple the first one to understand that they need to make watch bands, that there's some variety to the watch bands? I don't get that. That seems like such a simple thing. It seems like it should have been the first thing that someone would have done, just to try to introduce some diversity. And yet almost every single smartwatch comes with one band and one band only, maybe two if you're really, really lucky. So I think that is a big differentiator right off the bat, and really shows that Apple is paying attention to the fashion aspect of watch and not just the tech aspect.
I don't know if I have the answer to the why of it, but it's certainly not without precedent. Nobody knew what to make a smartphone look like until Apple showed them, and then everybody, suddenly got it. Nobody knew how to make a tablet computer until the iPad, and then it was an obvious design, as Samsung's lawyers would tell the courts.
I thought it was. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ted.
I was going to say, I thought it was a great decision on the straps. I thought that was absolutely spot on. Maybe that was the fashion people that they hired that contributed to that. That clearly, if you want to be cool with a phone, with a watch, you don't want it to look like everybody else's. And you, of course, and when you're dressed up, you don't necessarily want the same watch as when you're going jogging. And so the ability not only to have a variety of watches, but possibly a variety of bands, that is, but possibly have more than one band that you can then switch for different times, I think is really going to be a strong selling point. And I think it was a very smart decision on their part. The one thing I will say, and looking at Joe's smartwatch reminded me, I remember years ago when digital watches first came out, I was a big fan of them because I'm a computer geeky guy, and I thought, this is great. It says 9:23. I don't actually have to look at a dial anymore, and it'll say the date and the hour and the time and whatever, all this information, and I can convert it into a stopwatch at the same time. It was all, back in those days before smartphones. It all seemed very cool. And then one time I swapped my digital watch broke, and I went to buy a new one, and I found that they were virtually all gone. Unless you wanted a cheap Timex or something like that, all the nicer watches had gone back to the analog dial. The whole digital watch thing just faded. People who wanted nice watches didn't want it to look like that. And I wonder whether that effect may have maybe some problem that this Apple Watch has to overcome. Even though there's an analog display that you can make for it, I wonder whether there will be some pushback that says, no, this is not the sort of fancy watch I want to wear.
Well, I think there are a lot of very nice looking analog faces for it, and there are also some digital looking faces, but they're still nicely designed. They're nicely rendered. I thought they showed the butterfly watch face for just a couple seconds, and it's not going to be for everybody, but even if Samsung came out with a butterfly watch, it would have two motions, right? It would have open, close, open, like that. The butterfly on the Apple Watch was so beautifully rendered. Mm-hmm. And to me, the difference in Apple is not so much what these devices do, but how they do them. And Apple cares as much about that as what features get packed in there. And you don't wind up with a phone that looked like it was designed by a programmer.
Joe?
Yeah, I know nothing about. I mean, this is fashion for me. This is, I that's not my world, so I almost don't really care what it looks like. I really care what it does. I've been putting off buying a fitness tracker in the hope that Apple would come out with something cooler than anything that was out there already. So get to check that box. So that's cool for me. It's like my iPhone. I hardly ever make actual phone calls. I'm really happy to have this device in my pocket, but the phone part is almost irrelevant to me. And I think with the Apple Watch, the timekeeping part is nice. I mean, I'll use it occasionally, but that's not even the thing that's most important to me. Certainly the fitness stuff, the fact that, like, if I'm driving and a text comes in, I can just do this. I don't have to ask Siri what my last message was, or pull over and pull my phone out of my pocket. I can just glance and see, oh, that's what the message was. There are a lot of things like that I feel are going to really make my life more convenient. Now, is it $350 worth of more convenient? I don't know, but I'm really, really intrigued. It's certainly at least $150 worth of convenience. So, and I'll take a chance. But I would have probably bought it no matter what it looked like, given the things that it can do. Of course, I agree about I'm not going to look at photos 3 pixels high in my watch, and I don't need to use my watch to control something that is going to really happen on my iPhone, and I have my iPhone in my pocket anyway. But I can think of a lot of situations in which it's going to be really handy, and I'm looking forward to it.
Guys, to wrap it up, and I'm not exactly sure how I want to phrase this, but for the iWatch and just across the board and no particular audiences, what do you think the number one characteristic or feature of the iWatch that's going to drive sales? I mean, and there's several. There's we didn't really get into the health tracking, although Joe touched on it just a little bit. We did talk about Apple Pay as a method. We've talked about the fashion part, the customization parts. What do you think? What would you say is the number one driver in your opinion? And I'll flip the order this time. Ted?
Well, I have to say two, because I think the health stuff is really critical for people who care about that. It's just going to, I think it's going to cause problems for Fitbit and other companies like that. And I think the ability to have that stuff built into a watch and that works with your phone integrated with it, I think is going to be really huge. So, but at the same time, the reason I want to add a second one is that I know that there are people who won't care about that don't use anything like that now and never will. And so I think for the more general audience, to me, and this is just a shot in the dark now because I obviously haven't had time to play with it at all, the messaging thing, I think will be something that everybody will want to use. To be able to send a quick message to somebody and receive one through the phone, including that digital touch thing where you can just draw like the fish doodle that the guy did and send it to somebody, I think that's really going to be attractive, and people are going to say, wow, this is really fun to do and useful as well. I worry a little bit actually about how much interference it may be in crowds, and especially like I'm already thinking about like in a movie theater, you're going to have to turn your watch off because otherwise the screen is going to be lighting up all the time, with little messages that you're receiving, so I wonder how there might be some practicalities there.
You have to put your watch in airplane mode.
That's right, but otherwise I think that's really going to be it.
That's interesting. An airplane mode watch, excuse me, or a movie mode for the watch. Yeah, a lot of possibilities.
Hey, with the NFC, movie theaters might be able to build something in that puts it into silent mode as you enter the theater. That would be a good idea.
And I guess I just will add that in terms of oh shoot, forget it. I'll come back later.
Oh, I took you off track. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Joe, how about yours?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Ted. There will be. I think the fitness and health stuff is pretty huge. I wouldn't buy it just for the Apple Pay, and I wouldn't personally buy it for the fashion statement, although I'm sure some people would. But it's really not. Like, I don't see it as an object that I would buy because it does one particular thing well. I buy it for the multipurposeness of it. I buy it for the fact that it can do so many different things, and I don't even know what all the things will be that I will like it for. But that's what appeals to me is the breadth of things that it can accomplish.
Chuck?
The trite answer, I think, is that it's from Apple. And for a lot of people, that will be enough. For quite a number of people, that will be enough. I think the better answer is what Joe said, and it's what I'll refer to as the gestalt of it. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and it's not any one or two features, but it's the fact that all of these features are now in this convenient place, in this easily glanceable place, with the screen that doesn't turn on until you lift it up, and that can do all these cool things for you. And then I think as it matures, as the watch matures and the ecosystem around it matures, it's going to be the connectedness. So to your lifestyle, again, to the Internet of Things, and to what it enables you to do beyond computerish stuff.
I wish I had something really wise to add to that, but I kind of think you're all right. And I think the fact that they have made it accessible from a fashion standpoint and an appearance standpoint is going to be that's going to be the thing that makes it open up to a whole different audience than anything else we've seen. I mean, we've seen the things that they look like a 1960s remote control strapped to somebody's wrist, and they're touting it as the next great thing. This doesn't look that way. This looks nice, and it's the kind of thing that you could wear with a suit, or you could wear out jogging. You can customize the straps, you can customize the watch face, you can customize the two together to create a completely different look. So I think that's going to make a big difference when it comes to who this appeals to. And the $349 price point, have you guys been to a Rolex shop? I mean, that's insane what people will pay for these watches.
Well, I would add something about that. First, I would say I entirely agree with Joe. I thought that was the best answer. It's just like the iPhone. The iPhone, what makes the iPhone so incredible is that it does a million things. It replaces all sorts of devices that you would have had to carry around. It's like the Swiss Army knife of electronic devices. And I think the watch has the possibility of being in the same way. But the one thing that did occur to me in terms of the price, at one point Joe said, well, maybe $150 it would be okay. $350 is a little bit tighter. In one sense for me, and I don't mean this to be globally, but in one sense for me, even free would present certain problems and that is it becomes another device that I have to remember to charge every night, another device that I have to remember to carry around. On days I have my iPad, my iPhone, my Apple Watch. At what point do the scales tip and you say enough already? I don't need so many digital devices on my body or in close proximity to my body as I move around the day. I'm not sure the Apple Watch is going to tip the scales negatively in that direction, but again, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, one more issue on price too. Remember that maybe we got a little spoiled by the iPhone and the iPad. This is not a subsidized price. So when we're paying our 100 costs, we're AT&T or whoever your carrier is picking up a hefty portion of that cost and amortizing it, through what you ultimately pay for it because they amortize it across there. But it makes the price point, the initial price point, a little deceptive, I think. So maybe $349 is not as unreasonable as it might seem at face value.
And you're making me think of another point. Speaking of money, and that is, when you buy a watch, like when you buy a Rolex, like Chuck was saying, you don't intend to get the new version of the Rolex that comes out next year. But that's going to be an issue with the watch. And when Apple improves it every year, is it going to be an annual investment of $500 that you're going to want to make so that you can get the latest iWatch every year? I don't know. That's another huge expense issue to think about.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's going to be the pass down thing. I mean, just like iPads and iPhones now, you pass it down to kids, you pass it down to friends, family members. The ones that aren't the early adopters, they may have looked at it with a little curiosity and said, gee, well, maybe. And so maybe you can either pass it down or sell it to them at a greatly reduced price and help subsidize the next version.
Or an exorbitant price if you can get away with it.
I'm hiring you as my negotiator, Ted.
Exactly.
Guys, thank you so much. I know it's been a busy day for everybody. Really appreciate the time and the insights, and we'll do it again. Ted, we'll get back on schedule soon. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Joe, book number 49, excuse me. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Book number 49 coming up. We'll talk to you when you do it.
Talk about it soon.
Great. And Chuck, it's always a pleasure. We got to get you back on more often when we can get you out of the woods.
I would love that. That's great.
Great. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices, the MacJury on MacVoices. We'll be back again with more soon. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at CashFly.com.